ready.
Well, what I'm getting is the
Edit.
and you mean start over again? Is what?
Correct.
Well, I just did that a moment ago, but I'll.
Is everybody else seeing YouTube?
This is Tom. Mine just came up fine.
He was seeing 10-6.
Well, what I came up with now is commissioner meeting for 12/22/2020, but it's a wait meeting will start shortly.
There's two entries for that. He's deleting one and the other one is our live.
Looks like we are live. Right. So, we have Commissioner Peck and Didier on board.
Commissioner Didier here.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioner Peck.
Good morning, all. We do have all three commissioners and their respective offices, and we will call this meeting to order. And if you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag
To the flag
of the United States of America.
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
One nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Our first item on our agenda this morning is an update, legislative representation update from Jim Potts and Zach Kennedy. And they were on the phone a moment ago.
Yeah, we're still here.
Good.
Oh,
Good. Good morning, gentlemen.
morning. Morning. How's everybody doing down there?
Trying to blow us away, but other than that, I think it's fine.
Okay. It could be trying to snow you out, so it could be worse.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
It's listed and all that too.
Yeah.
So, well, we wanted to touch bases with you guys here, of course, ahead of our modified legislative session that's coming up. We wanted to do a couple of things. Number one was give you an update on what we know and what we see coming, what we've heard, some presumptions, suppositions, if you will, on what we're going to see and how we might handle that. And number two, of course, it's contract season, so we'd like to talk with you about our contract for the next year. So our first, we'll kind of start on our little update that, our update spiel that we've been given. And as you guys know, this is going to be a much different year over in the legislature, where everything's going to be online. There's only a few people allowed in the Capitol building, even leadership and a couple of staffers for each one of them. Everything else is going to be online. The legislature does have their systems set up for handling committee hearings and meetings with the legislators and the floor action and everything. They have tested it, and I'd put that in quotes, in terms of actually handling the bandwidth and the number of people who may or may not want to testify. We'll see how well their system works. I think that at least the first couple of weeks are going to be a bunch of technical issues, and we'll see how they work through that. So, there's no telling how many of the general public out there with the enhanced access, I would say, people are going to have more access to the legislative process, being that it's all going to be online. I don't know if they will take advantage of that or not. We will see. The big change, for us in terms of our activities and what we're going to be doing and how we work, I think that we're going to be looking a lot at working with the legislative aides, and that's just going to be a function of the actual, really just how this thing is set up, because previously, if a legislator had a question for another legislator, even they just walk out their door and go down the hallway and talk to the individual and then walk back. And now they've got to do it through a Zoom meeting or a phone call or text messages or Messenger, whatever they're using. And it takes time, and the schedules have to, meet up, and it's just going to take a lot of time for the legislators just to kind of trudge through this mess. So I think the legislative aides are going to be a lot more instrumental in our conversations, whether it be, policy or financial conversations that we're having with them. Educational process will be with the legislative aides much more than it has been in the past. And we have really utilized that legislative aid network. That's kind of been our main operating point, because they have the ear of the member, and they're generally well-educated individuals and can really work with us. So that's going to be, a little bit more intensive for us this year, but I think it's going to be beneficial. We're going to spend a lot of time this year conversating with those legislative aides and educating them. Specifically, we have been told that there are basically 3 topic areas in which we should expect legislation to fall. Number 1 is going to be a tax increases, whatever that looks like. I mean, I'm sure you've seen some of the stuff coming out from what the governor has put forward already, and then, the other options that they're looking at, capital gains and otherwise. The other category, the second one, is going to be something with carbon, and cap and trade, cap and tax, carbon credits, however you want to look at it, whatever they're going to talk about. I think we have a pretty good idea what that's like based on the last 3.5, 4 years of Governor Inslee's budgets and, his proclamations. That we could probably take exactly what he's done the last few years and put it out there and say this is the path they're going. That specifically is going to have a pretty big impact in the rural areas because agriculture is included, and any manufacturing in the rural areas is definitely going to be something that I think is going to get caught in the wide net that they're going to try and throw over what they're seeing in the urban centers. And a majority of our legislators are from urban centers and probably have never left them. So that's something, especially their legislative aides, that's where we're going to do some education. And then the third area that legislation is really going to fall under, a focus area, is going to be criminal justice reform. And don't get too excited. This is criminal justice reform as it would be referenced in body cameras. We're looking at more training, different training, use of force policies, personal liability potential for officers, and that means, an officer could do his job exactly how they're supposed to, fall within all department policies, do the proper use of force, not break the law in any way or infringe upon someone's rights, and still have a civil liability for an action they took. And so that's something that, we're going to have to watch real closely. I mean, just the training component of that could be extremely expensive down on the local level. And then if there is civil liability, a civil liability component that is passed, that could be expensive indirectly to your, the local jurisdictions, because it's going to cost each individual officer probably going to have to carry some sort of insurance or something against that, which then takes right out of their paycheck, and it just all trickles down. So those are the main areas that we're looking at. Sadly, the criminal justice reform, we haven't heard anything about indigent defense falling under that. We're going to bring it up, though. So the governor, on another note, as I'm sure you guys have seen, the governor is suggesting and recommending that we do, or that the state implement social equity, or basically a social equity department, another layer of bureaucracy there, looking at specifically institutional racism in the state and local governments. He's proposed, coming up on 30 million, like 26 million, I think he was saying, plus some initial funding to go towards that. And the entire job of this particular institution, if you will, would be to look for institutional racism in the government, all the way from the city all the way up through the state legislative, executive, judicial branches. There are some pretty big concerns with that. real specifically looking at, it could be a witch hunt if you're not careful, if there aren't clearly defined guidelines. And so that's definitely one of the things that we're going to be looking at from the local level. Now, the unfunded mandate issue, it seems like almost anything that comes down from the top these days has some component of funding, and unfunded mandates are a big deal. So the good thing this year is, we are looking at a year following a pretty much landmark court case, which is the ballot box court case for the counties. And that's a pretty big deal for us, and we're going to spend a lot of time educating the different legislators and legislative aides in the fact that what that really means and the implications it could have going forward. And that was a big deal for two reasons. Number one, they ruled that it was an unfunded mandate. And number two, that they went retroactive and said that the state had to repay the counties that put these ballot boxes in, which both of those combined puts a lot of force behind that, a lot of importance into this particular decision. It makes our stick bigger. So now we can actually go to the Hill and we can say, instead of saying, hey, stop the unfunded mandates, don't do that. The legislators go, well, talk to these guys, or now we say stop the unfunded mandates, or we may have to be forced to take action. And, it's not fair to just spring that on a lot of the legislators. We have a lot of new legislators up there, and we have a lot of new people circulating through, whether it be through staff or legislative aides or anything like that. So our job is to make sure that they are educated and they understand what an unfunded mandate is. They understand what that implies and what the statute says. And then the fact that we do have this stick now, and we may, if it gets to a point, we will yield it. And so that's going to be a big focus for us. And, realistically, the next case on the docket for an unfunded mandate may very well be indigent defense. I mean, that doesn't even start to go towards, the cost for carrying prisoners and the medical costs and anything else associated with that. So those are some of the topic areas and some of the issues that we're going to look at, and some of the, things that we see coming down the pipe. This year, I mean, if you think about it, almost anything you touch, anything you do can be tied to carbon, more taxes, and anything criminal justice related is on the table. So we are literally going to have to comb through every piece of legislation with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that we're not getting caught in some sort of a broad sweeping stroke. So that's our breakdown on what we're looking at. I don't know if you guys have heard or not, but Senator Scheffler has stepped down from leadership. He will be in the Appropriations Committee, is where he wants to sit. I'm guessing he'll probably sit on agriculture, natural resources, something like that as well.
Welcome. To join a conference now, please enter a meeting number
Go ahead,
followed
Zach.
by pound.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure if it kicked me off. So Senator Braun will be taking over for Senator Scheffler.
Press pound
And
to continue.
hi. And so that's kind of our happenings, our report right now. Do you guys have any questions for us? Is there anything on your radar that you're seeing coming down the pipeline here that you really would like us to pay attention to? Things that are concerning, things that you're encouraged about, that you'd like for us to emphasize, just anything at all.
Gentlemen, you have some concerns?
Yes, this is Commissioner Didier. I have a couple here. You're speaking about unfunded mandates, and we're getting hammered on public defense. How are we going to be able to keep up with the public defense mandates when we're being asked to do too much here as far as a community, and they're putting these mandates down. Now we're into the Juvenile Justice Center is what I'm being told, that we're going to have legal counsel there too.
And I think that's a very, very, very pointed, legitimate question that, the legislators for years even our friends have been saying, well, you better sue us because we can't get anything done on the state level at the legislative branch. So, realistically, I do really think, especially because now you have precedent behind you, I think the solution to this really is another court case addressing that unfunded mandate. And we've shown over and over and over again that indigent defense in Washington State, we are grossly underfunded. We are far behind the national average. And we're in the bottom couple of percentile in the nation for what the state pays for on indigent defense. That said, indigent defense is a big part of most counties' budgets. Anywhere between 4 and 15 or 18% of their budget, depending on the year, depending on, what's going on. And that makes a big difference. So I think to answer your question, we feel your pain and we understand and we've been sharing that. But this is where I think we start educating people about the big stick that you're carrying around now as a group of counties.
Yes. The other question I have is, I received an email here from Columbia County, and Dr. Weissman, who was our Secretary of Health, he left and he's heading to North Carolina. But he had been meeting with the governor, and they had been working on policy to bring to the legislature. This legislature will realign public health in Washington State. And these are the 5 main points. Number 4 is very concerning. Number 1 would be eliminate the distinction between health departments, health districts, and health and human service departments. 2, create regional health districts of no less than a population of 250,000 with an administrator with medical experience. 3 is create a state position of a health officer for each of the above regional health districts. Number 4, change local health boards to have the commissioners not be a majority on the board, but add medical professionals to board. 5, keep health offices in each county. Very concerning because every step of the way we are undermining our power as elected officials in our counties, and this is very disturbing to me.
Yeah, I think if you look a few years back, the RSNs were basically dissolved, and that was kind of a good template for something that may have worked in this particular circumstance. But yeah, I think that what they're looking at is, you're correct, they're trying to pull back control from the local level and dictate that from more of a state or a agency, a policy directive. Can you please share that with us? Can you share that email with us? That would be real helpful for us in terms of talking points, and we would like to address that. And of course, share your thoughts and feelings with the legislators on all that.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. And you're right. I think that what that letter that you just outlined there is going to be the tone for this year. I think we're going to see a lot of push towards bureaucracy administration on the local level, removal of control from local elected officials, and put in the hands of, what would be called in quotes, as qualified professionals. Not elected by the people, and that is of big concern to all of us. And it should be of concern to everybody. Realistically, that's not a good step.
Zach, Commissioner Peck, on the unfunded mandates issue, the whole ballot box measure came as a result of the legislative steering committee within WASAC agreeing to pursue some legislation. And in the ballot box, that was chosen not because of the large dollar amounts involved, because it was very clean. It was what we call a clean unfunded mandate. Some of the others, like indigent defense, have some other legislation associated that doesn't make it quite as clean that the state has an obligation to fund all of it. Clearly, they have an obligation to fund more than they are. And WASAC and the Legislative Steering Committee are focused on that unfunded mandate as well as a few others. So just be aware, and I know you've got contacts with WASAC too. You can get an update there. But the efforts on unfunded mandates may get pushed a little bit sideways with what was an unexpected sort of shot across the bow from the governor's staff in the last couple of weeks, where for the last few years, working with SALFO, the state public health folks, that we were on a path for some improvements in public health programs, and especially in the funding side from the state down to the health districts. Well, out of nowhere, the governor comes out with this proposal that Commissioner Didier alluded to in the email. And so the Legislative Steering Committee at WASAC, guided by Jamie Bodden, has put together a steering committee made up of WASALFO and WASAC members. Just looking here, who are representatives from King, Clark, Skagit, Douglas, Mason, Jefferson, Klickitat, Lewis, Adams, Walla Walla, Yakima, Snohomish, and Franklin. I'm the rep from Franklin. And these are, of course, all legislative steering committee members. So we're very much focused on the efforts of the governor to upend the public health structure. And for people who aren't familiar with the WASALFO acronym, it's Washington State Association of Local Public Health Officials, so it's not the state health department, just to make clear on that distinction. So good issues, and I'm not sure what made the governor think it was a good idea to try and upend this thing and blindside everybody at the last minute, but that's certainly what's happened.
Well, I think what really triggered that, I mean, he's probably been considering it for quite some time, but I think what really was the tipping point was Spokane firing Bob Lutz. And
I've heard that rumor, I just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's too much coincidence for me to, when we're looking at that, I mean, there was some pretty big uproar, and now Bob Lutz is working for the state. So, so
I didn't know.
Yep. Yeah, so he went and took a position at the state level in the health districts or health department doing that. So, now on the coronavirus task force, I believe, I have to look to be sure, but that's, I think that's really kind of the impetus behind that. And in regards to the ballot box unfunded mandate being very clean, you're absolutely right, and it was a really good place to start. And, I think that as we go forward, obviously every individual case is different. The facts are different. The situation is different. But at least we have something to reference and say, look, we won once. There is precedent. Now, all things considered, here we go. Let's look at the next ones. And, the hope is maybe that big stick we're carrying now is enough to get the legislators to listen and do this through a legislative process and keep it out of the courts. That's easier, cheaper, better for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. I just wanted to temper your comments just a touch so people didn't misperceive that indigent defense was going to be as easy and legally clean as ballot boxes were. It's much more complicated. But we still have the benefit of the precedent of the ballot box case, and we will use it, and we are in a much better place than we were before that case. You're absolutely right about all that.
And heck, even with the indigent defense, I mean, there's a lot of upside potential on that. If we're sitting at 4% right now, I mean, there's really nowhere to go, but up 15% would be better. 50% would be better than that, and 100% would be fantastic. So, any little bit down on the local level for all of us really, really makes a difference, as you know. And so, hopefully that conversation will be fruitful. And, if we're lucky, we will be able to keep it out of the courts. So that's what I think that's what everybody's really hoping for, is that we'll be able to actually get something done legislatively.
That would be bonus.
It really would, and we'll see. I mean, this year is really going to, I think, stress our legislative process. It's going to test everyone involved. And it is going to be frustrating, I can tell you, gentlemen, that is no question whatsoever when it comes to that, because, we're dealing with a group of people that communicate constantly, and now they've got to do it all online. And, some of the people aren't familiar with computers. They don't, you guys were having issues with your system when we called in, now imagine that compounded by the number of senators, representatives, their staff members, legislative aides, everybody involved, and you've got a train wreck. So it's definitely going to be a very, very interesting year coming up. It's exciting. This fun challenge, I guess, for everybody. But it is definitely going to be a challenge, meeting the communication needs and staying on top of things and making sure that our voice is heard.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for chiming in, and I'm sure the rest of the other commissioners will be looking forward to your updates occasionally. This is my final last meeting. I started working with Jim 16 years ago, and we've had a really good run. And Zach, not quite so many years, probably getting close to 10, though, I suppose now. But just appreciate all the help you gentlemen have given Franklin County and our rural counties over here in the east side. So keep up the good work. It is, like you say, it is going to be a new challenge this year, and each year is somewhat of a challenge, but not to the extent that we're walking into today. So thank you, and we'll cross paths someplace.
Well, we appreciate working with you very much, and thanks for your service, and we wish you the best in whatever you decide to do next.
Yeah.
And Bob, I don't know if you folks have discussed our contract or not, but it needs to be renewed.
Okay, I personally have not seen it. I don't know if Karen has seen it yet and gone any place, but I would expect that I'm on the way out, so I can't say much, but I would expect that it would be renewed. But
well, we'd appreciate it, and we enjoy working with all you folks.
Yeah, I think Keith is trying to get on here.
Yes, that contract is in process, Commissioner.
Thank you. Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your guys' time, and we say it every time, and I will emphasize it this time. This year especially, we are available pretty much anytime. Don't call at midnight, please. But call, text, email, anytime, whatever works for you guys. It's going to be imperative this year that we have really good constant communication, because what we see happening is things are going to move slow as molasses in wintertime, and then all of a sudden they're going to break free and go. So please, if you see something or have a question, do not hesitate to call or email anytime.
Yeah. Well, and I think that probably goes two ways, Zach. Anything that you and Jim see, a quick email of some sort wouldn't hurt to the commissioners also from that direction. So
absolutely not a problem at all.
All right. Thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate it. Any other questions for Jim or Zach?
Commissioner Frack, Zach, just a note, I've had conversations with a number of state representatives here in the last few days about the governor and his actions and his proclamations, and recognizing that local elected officials, city councils and counties, don't have any legal authority to open counties or make really meaningful change for our citizens and or their businesses. Trying to get some movement through the legislature, the folks who, surprise, surprise, the ones who actually voted virtually unanimously and approved the law that gave the governors authority, trying to break their silence and get them to actually take some specific public action with the governor. And we can talk more on that later if you're available. I don't want to take up a lot of the board's time right now, but just wanted you to know that that's happening in the background.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're following and would love to chat a little bit later about that as well. One thing I can say to that is Washington has always fancied itself to try and be ahead of California. We're little California up here, and they're putting together a pretty big movement to remove the powers from their governor and even a recall vote on their governor. So I think it's coming, and I think that
we're kind of on the same page there.
Yep, and so we're here to support in any way we possibly can.
Thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate your time this morning.
Absolutely. Likewise.
All right.
All right. I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you.
All right, thank you. With that, we will move on to our state auditor's office exit conference. Who's going to lead this one off, please?
Hi, this is Teresa Modrell.
Yes, Teresa.
I just wanted to let you know that today I also have Jose Garcia, the Assistant Audit Manager, as well as Tina Watkins, who is our Assistant Director of Local Audit. They will be here to answer any questions or help out as we move along in this. So just today to let you know, we are going to be starting with, looks like Karen has it up on the screen, page 1 of our exit conference handout. I'm going to go through that, and then we will go through each of the reports. So again, our purpose today is to share the results of our accountability, federal, and financial audit to you. Those reports will be published following this exit conference, and it will take about 2 weeks for those to be published on our actual website for you to see. However, we did review for the accountability audit January 1st through December 31st of 2019. That report can be seen on page 4, and we'll go into that in detail here pretty soon. We also will be publishing your financial statement and federal grant compliance audits for the same year, also 2019. We just wanted to thank the county for providing the requested documentation and support in a timely manner, especially during this pandemic. Also, we wanted to thank the information services staff for providing us with remote access to the county's database so we could continue to work on the audit without being on site. So we really appreciate that extra help that we got this year. To go to our recommendations, these are not included in the audit report. There is a management letter that is referenced in the audit report. However, it is not published. And we do have some exit items. These exit items have been given to Tom in the auditor's office for the management's consideration. So if you'd like to go to page 7 of 43 for the accountability audit, we'll actually start with the results in brief. Thank you, Karen. So for the accountability audit, the areas that we will go over, they'll be in more detail there below, but we reviewed the overall results and conclusions in the county. They complied in all material respects in applicable state laws, regulations, and their own policies, and provided out of the controls for safeguarding public resources. So basically, out of the technical language, the county had a very clean accountability audit. Accountability audits review how the county uses the public resources, compliance over state laws and regulations, as well as following their own policies and procedures. And the procedures that we use to assess are based on risk. Those risks are analyzed through analytical procedures such as payroll and vendor trends, risk assessments that we conduct with management and council members, as well as other areas of concern that could be across the state. So for the areas that we looked at for the county, we looked at payroll, so we looked at your gross wages, paid time off conversions, and leave cash outs and some settlement agreements. So basically what we're looking at there is to make sure that all of those areas were supported by personal action forms or settlement agreements or balanced leave. So we made sure that everything was aligned and we didn't have any major issues in any of these sections, just to let you know. We also looked at the use of restricted funds. So it's going to be the sales and use tax for public facilities in rural counties. This is a restricted fund. There are only certain projects and there are certain requirements that you have to meet to be able to do these projects. And those normally would be in your approved economic development plan. We looked at accounts payable through general disbursements, just making sure that they were supported, allowable, and approved. We did look at an annual report filing. That was the Schedule 17, which is the annual construction report. We just wanted to make sure that the county, if they used their labor force, it was less than 10% of the public work construction budget. We also looked at the Sheriff's Office, the reconciliation of the citations. We looked at contract compliance for the Benton Franklin Workforce Development Council and Career Path Service contracts. We also looked at the county's financial condition, especially in this time with the pandemic, just making sure coming into this that the county was in a good position to weather this storm. We also looked at your self-insurance for unemployment compensation, just making sure that there is enough set aside to pay for those claims. The next page, page 8, is going to be the related reports that we will be publishing along with this, just our financial and federal grant programs, and it also has the website where you can look for those once those are published. The next section.
Thank you. So the financial statement report begins on page 11, and we'll go ahead and go on to page 12. If you go on to page 14, this is our schedule of findings and question cost. Our audit for this is a reporting requirement under the uniform guidance. In summary, the financial statements that we audited, we are issuing an unmodified opinion on the fair presentation of the financial statements. That includes the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate information that was prepared in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States. In addition to issuing an opinion on the financial statements, we also review the internal control process over financial reporting. And in this report, we are required to disclose if there were any significant deficiencies. We did not have any deficiencies that are significant deficiencies. We also are required to report material weaknesses, and we did identify deficiencies that are considered to be material weaknesses. And I'll explain the definitions of these further in our financial statement report. Additionally, with the financial statement audit, we also review for any compliance or instances of non-compliance with any state laws, regulations, or contracts that may be material to the financial statements, and we did not identify any in our audit. Also, we did perform a federal compliance audit. That audit involves looking at the internal controls over major programs. We also are reporting no deficiencies in the design or operation of internal controls over major federal programs that we consider to be significant deficiencies. We also identified no deficiencies that we consider to be material weaknesses in the federal compliance audit. And so our opinion for the federal program is also going to be an unmodified opinion, and that means it's a clean audit opinion. In addition, the uniform guidance requires us to report any findings, and we did not identify any that are required to be disclosed under the uniform guidance. Further down below, we are listing the major federal programs that comprise our federal audit, and that is CFDA 20.205 and 20.224. Both of these are part of the highway planning and construction cluster. the dollar threshold to distinguish between Type A programs and Type B programs under the uniform guidance was $750,000. The highway planning construction cluster qualified as a Type A program. Also, the county did not qualify as a low-risk auditee under uniform guidance, and what that means is it just requires a higher threshold on auditing the costs of federal expenditures. The next section is financial statement findings. We have finding 2019-001. We'll go down to that below. That is a financial statement finding. We also identified no federal audit findings that were required to be disclosed here. Down below is a copy of our audit finding, and this finding relates to internal controls over accounting and financial statement preparation for 2019. Part of our review is making sure that the financial statements are materially correct and making sure that the information presented is accurate and reliable. Our audit identified a material weakness that we are presenting as a finding today. Part of that process related to during the preparation of the financial statements, the county was correcting an error from a 2018 audit, and in preparing their 2019 financial statements, they partially implemented GASB standard requirement number 84, and the GASB does not allow for a partial implementation of that statement. So we identified deficiencies in the internal controls related to the implementation of this and any new GASBs that might come into play, as well as the review process of the county did not identify and correct this error before we audited the financial statements. Further below, the GASB 84 relates to preparing fiduciary financial statement information, and what ended up happening was the statement of changes in fiduciary net position were over-reported by $621 million, and that was over-reporting total additions and total deductions. This is additional financial statement information that was required under the GASB, but as a full implementation. Additionally, the HAPO operating fund over-reported capital assets by $1 million, accumulated depreciation by $876,000, and depreciation expense by $31,000. There were errors related to the reporting of pensions that affected multiple funds and accounts, such as pension expense, liabilities, deferred inflows, and outflows. Our audit also identified less significant errors in the statements and the notes and the schedules. In working with the county, we did have a discussion about these items, and the county did elect to defer the implementation of GASB 84 and corrected the errors related to the fiduciary fund in the financial statements. So our recommendation is listed below, and that is for the county to review and seek guidance, research and seek guidance on any new GASB statements, as well as strengthening its internal control process over the financial statement preparations to ensure that the financial statements, the notes, and any applicable schedules are reviewed at an appropriate level of detail to ensure that the information prepared is accurate and complete. Also below, on page 18, we do provide a copy of the county's response to this finding, as well as our response or our remarks in relation to the finding. Are there any questions so far?
Questions, gentlemen?
This is Tom. I don't have a question really. But I would like to say we work great with the state auditor's office. They do give us a lot of guidance through this. We did apparently misrepresent our fiduciary funds, and you got to remember these aren't county funds. These are statements outside of our county's financial statements, and we are a bit surprised too that this merited a finding. We don't disagree that we partially implemented a full implementation, and to say that the financials are $621 million off. I mean, these are inflows and outflows. Net effect is zero on basically funds the county doesn't own. So we thought that this should probably be an exit item. Maybe we did fix it. We sure appreciate their feedback, but I think during this COVID year, we all worked remotely. There wasn't as much time to review each other's work. So we do appreciate bringing it to light, but I just want to say that we don't feel that it should have been a finding. So that's it.
I would like to add, Tom, you are correct. The net effect of that would be zero. And we do appreciate the county for going back and making those corrections. This is probably a presentation item that will be required in the next fiscal year audit, and we'll follow up on that finding then. We'll go on to page 20. Page 20 is our financial reporting on compliance and other matters related to the financial statement audit that we performed. The first part talks about our guidance in performing the audit, also the fiscal year that we are covering, which is January 1st through December 31st of 2019. The second paragraph discloses note 18 to the financial statements. This is just a note disclosure that relates to the state of emergency that was declared by the governor, and is letting the reader know that this could have a negative financial impact on the county in the future. And it also, note 18, discloses management's plans in response to the matter. The financial statement audit, in performing the audit, we are reviewing internal controls over financial reporting to determine if audit procedures would be appropriate and the extent of those audit procedures. Additionally, our audit does not provide an opinion on the effectiveness of internal controls, but we are required to report if there were any control weaknesses. And those weaknesses and deficiencies are described in the scheduled audit findings and responses that we just covered in the finding. A deficiency in internal control exists when the design or operation of the control does not allow management or employees through the course of their work to prevent or detect and correct misstatements on a timely basis. A material weakness is a deficiency or a combination of deficiencies in the internal control such that there is a reasonable possibility that a material misstatement of the county's financial statements will not be prevented or detected. And a significant deficiency is one that is less severe than a material weakness, but important enough to merit the attention of those charged with government. And again, we just referenced the finding that we had went over. Our audit also goes over our audit. Yeah, sorry.
Can I add to that section? This is Tina with the auditor's office. Tom, I just wanted to respond to your question. I think Jose is in the right spot in the report to address it. First off, I want to thank you for your professionalism and the working relationship that we have with you. We are very empathetic. I can only imagine how challenging it was to do most of this work remotely, preparing these financial statements, and also certainly understand the challenges that having new GASBs can pose to any jurisdiction. I mean, we're talking about GASB 84. I still remember those in the early teens of GASBs in my career, so they've been adding them fast and furious. But the reason why it is included as a finding and not an exit item, as you commented earlier, is the exact report that Jose is speaking to. Audit standards tell us exactly when to report certain items and at what level. The two errors that Jose discussed, even though, yes, they do at some point do zero out, as was mentioned, are a very large dollar amount, especially in relation to the funds that they're being presented in. And that is the exact criteria of when we have to report it as a finding. So, but given your response to the finding and the ways that you corrected it, and a clean audit report that you're receiving, hopefully it should give all the readers confidence in your financial statements. And we sincerely appreciate your response to the finding. So that's all I wanted to interject. I hope that was somewhat helpful.
Oh, thanks, Tina. I do appreciate that. And I just want to say I'm really proud that we were able to get the report done on time, May 29th, I think, this year. The state auditors did graciously grant an extension to the report at 6 p.m. on its due date. But anyway, it was a challenging year, and I do appreciate your kind comments. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jose. Please continue.
All right. So in addition to the financial statement audit, part of that process is to determine if there are any instances of compliance that are material to the presentation of the financial statements, and if there are any items like laws, regulations, contracts, or grants, and if these items could have a direct and material effect, we are required to perform audit procedures to determine if there are any instances of noncompliance, and our test did not identify any instances of noncompliance, so we're required to report. The next report begins on page 23, and that is our independent auditor's report on compliance for each major federal program. So it switches a little bit to the federal compliance audit. First paragraph talks about those requirements by the U.S. Office of Management and Budget Compliance Supplement. This is where all the rules for the federal grants are listed and what compliance areas apply to which programs, and we use this supplement when we are performing the audit. Management is responsible for compliance with federal statutes, regulations, and the terms and conditions of its federal awards applicable to its federal programs. Our responsibility is to express an opinion on compliance on each of the county's major federal programs based on the audit types and the compliance requirements that we refer to above. In our audit, some of those compliance requirements include allowable cost and activities, reviewing, making sure that federal funds are used for the purpose of the fund. Some federal grants have reporting requirements, and we're reviewing those reported statements and making sure that the information is mathematically accurate and supported. Some other items include procurement or suspension and debarment. If there's any of those criteria that apply, we are reviewing and making sure that the county is in compliance with those requirements. And as such, our opinion is that the county complied in all material respects with the type of compliance requirements referred to above that could have a direct and material effect on each of its major federal programs for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2019. That means there was a clean audit opinion over the federal program. Additionally, we do have other matters to disclose. We are reporting a letter to management, and that letter is listed below, and that relates to the procurement policies. In addition to looking at compliance, we also report on any internal controls over those compliance requirements. And again, it is management's responsibility to making sure that they have established and maintained effective internal controls over compliance and the different types of compliance requirements. In planning the audit, we considered internal controls that could have a direct and material effect on each of its major federal programs. We are required to disclose if there were any deficiencies in internal control over compliance, as well as any material weaknesses in internal control over compliance, or if there were any significant deficiencies in internal controls. And our consideration of internal controls was just limited to the purposes that we have described in this report. Our audit is not designed to identify all deficiencies that may be material, that could be a material weakness or significant deficiencies. However, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal controls over compliance that we consider to be material weakness in those areas that we looked at. And if we go on to the next report, on page 26, is our independent auditor's report on the financial statements. So we have performed the audit for the financial statements, and it is management's responsibility to prepare the financial statements in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States, as well as making sure that there is a design, implementation, and maintenance of internal controls that are relevant to the preparation of these statements. Our responsibility is to express an opinion on the financial statements based on the audit procedures that we perform. Our audit is conducted under the government auditing standard, and those require us to plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements are free from material misstatements. Part of that process involves obtaining audit evidence about the amounts and the information that's disclosed in the financial statements. And we do review all of your major funds under the financial statement audit. And we believe we have obtained sufficient audit evidence to provide a basis for our opinion. And our opinion is listed below. So in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects to the respective financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of Franklin County for December 31st, 2019, as well as the respective changes in financial position and the cash flows thereof, as well as the respective budgetary comparison of the general and the county road funds for fiscal year 2019. So what that means is a clean audit opinion over the financial statements. Additionally, we do have a matters of emphasis, and that is related to note 18 of the financial statements. Again, this is just emphasizing the note disclosure relating to the state of emergency that was declared that could impact the financial statements in the future, and these are disclosed by the county in note 18. In addition to the financial statements, there is required supplementary information that the county is required to prepare, and our audit involves reviewing that information and comparing that information to the financial statements, as well as performing limited audit procedures to determine whether the information is properly prepared and accurate. However, we do not express an opinion on the assurance of that information. Additionally, in addition to required supplementary information, there's supplementary and other information. These are additional schedules that the county prepares as part of the financial statements. That includes a schedule of expenditures of federal awards, and we use this schedule in determining which federal programs will be audited, and it is required by uniform guidance. It is not required for the financial statement audits, but because it's required by uniform guidance, we are required to review that information and determine if it is fairly presented. And the last sentence indicates that the information was fairly presented in all material respects in relation to the financial statements taken as a whole. Any questions so far? Okay. If we could go to page 32. We do have the corrective action plan for findings reported under uniform guidance because the county did have a finding as well as a federal compliance audit. They are required to provide a corrective action plan under uniform guidance, and we have provided a copy of that plan. Additionally, we will follow up on the corrective action plan in our next audit to determine whether the finding has been corrected, and we will also report if that is corrected or if it's still an uncorrected item. And then if we could go to page 35. Page 35 talks about the management letter that was referenced in our federal compliance audit. This relates to the procurement procedures of the highway planning and construction grant funds. This is a repeat management letter. Part of uniform guidance requires that the procurement procedures of the county cover the federal compliance requirements for procurement in addition to the state requirements over procurement, and there is a difference in the criteria for state requirements as well as federal requirements. And our audit identified that the county hasn't made these corrections, and so we are reporting this management letter requesting that the county update its own written policies and procedures to address the federal procurement requirements in compliance with the uniform guidance, and ensures that this implementation of these procedures be consistent throughout the county and the department. And with that, I will pass it back to Teresa.
Thank you, Jose. So we are going to go all the way back to our exit conference handout. So page 2, all the way back up. There we go. So page 2 is just going to show us the status of our prior management letter items. Just to let you know that, as you can see, those are in progress. The county is working on them, trying to implement and make those changes. We do have one that was resolved, so we do appreciate that. We also have communications required by our audit standards. So we do have some uncorrected misstatements from the audited financial statements, and we do have those summarized and attached to the schedule. Those are going to be on page 36 through 38. Those are actually the all of the misstatements that we found. These are immaterial to the financial statements, and we agreed with the management that correcting those at this time was not necessary, but it's something for them to review and to think about in the next audit. The next is we will be finalizing your audit report. So the reports will be published on our SAO website, and you can get a subscription service if you'd like, and I'll notify you by email when those reports are released. You can sign up at the email that is provided on our handout here. We are on page 2. There you go. Also, we asked the management to sign a management representative letter that can be seen on page 39 through 43. That's just a letter letting us know that you have done your best to provide us with the current information and complied with the requirements. So that's usually signed by a council member and by Tom, and we did receive that back, so we appreciate that. Our audit costs do approximate the amount that we provided at the entrance, so there shouldn't be any surprises on that. We also have our next scheduled audit for spring 2021, possibly early summer of 2021, and we will be covering the same audits, the accountability for public resources, the financial statement, and federal program. The estimated cost for that next audit is right around $101,000, a little bit over. Please remember that this is just a budgeting tool, and it's not the guaranteed final cost of the audit. Lastly, we have working together to improve government. At the end of this audit, when the audit reports are published, management will receive an audit survey from us. We would appreciate if you could provide feedback to our audit. We value your opinion, and we do look at those, and if there's any feedback that you can give us to improve our services or things that you thought we did well, we do appreciate that, and we do take that into consideration. Also, we do have a local government support team. This is a free service to the county. They help provide online annual filings and training. They also offer resources through the client portal, as well as they staff our help desk. So if you have any questions related to auditing or accounting, they're there to provide those answers for you or to give you guidance as to where else to look. We have the Center for Government Innovation. This is another service that is at no cost to the county. They provide expert advice on areas of building lean culture to help our local governments find ways to be more efficient, effective, and transparent. You can also access this through our Improving Government tab on our SAO's website. They can provide you with information on accounting standard changes, such as the GASBs, comply with regulations, protect public resources, and also they can help you with cybersecurity risks. They also have another great tool, which is available. It's called our FIT tool, or our Financial Intelligence Tool. This can help you assess the monitor of your finances and compare yourself to other counties to see how you're doing. You are welcome to call that number on the handout or email them, and they'd be happy to set up a time to go over whatever information is that you are that you would be interested. And then lastly, there's our contact list, all the way from Kelly Collins, who's the Director of Local Audit, to Tina, who's with us today, Jenny, our Program and Audit Manager, Jose, and myself. So at any time you feel like you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to contact any one of us, and we would be happy to address those. Is there any questions that we can answer, or if maybe Tina has any additional information or would like to say anything else?
Any questions, anybody?
And this is Commissioner Peck. Just an observation. I'm looking for the audit team to verify my view here. We've obviously got some issues we maybe need to clean up in the process arena, but from what I've heard, it doesn't appear that any public funds have been put in jeopardy or at risk, and certainly not misplaced or lost or misused or any of those things. That everything you've described that you'd like us to put more emphasis on is process. And I don't mean to minimize that, to suggest that the process isn't important, because it does give a picture of the reliability of the final outcome. But with respect to constituents, the work that the auditor's office and staff have done have fully protected public assets, and I don't want any misperception to come from what is a lengthy discussion. Is there anything in that sort of 30,000-foot analysis that you would not agree with, or is that fairly accurate?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, I didn't hear the complete question. My phone kind of blanked out for a second.
Teresa?
Yeah.
Did. This is Tina. Do you mind if I answer?
Oh, yeah, please, feel free.
Okay. So I appreciated actually the plain talk for using the word process. I think that does accurately describe the internal control concerns that we are required to report that are in your financial statement audit. So yes, we are not reporting on a misuse of public funds in the financial statements. They were there. We are speaking to the process or the internal controls over preparation of the financial statements and reporting information in that. Does that meet your needs for your question?
It does, and I don't mean in any way to minimize the importance of the process and the confidence that it gives us in the end result. Those are important things, but I just didn't want anyone to misinterpret or misunderstand the work of the auditor's office and get the impression that somehow public resources were in jeopardy, or that the auditor's office hadn't fully accounted for things. Despite my occasional pokes at them for minor things, in the big picture, I think they do an outstanding job in this particular case. I just want to be clear that these were process deficiencies that I believe were easily corrected and didn't place public resources in jeopardy. My opinion, anyway. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions? No. Thank you for the auditor's team. This has been a good recap. I think it's probably the most intensive recap we've had since I've been here. So, thank you.
Thank you, and good luck. Good luck to you on your retirement. We appreciate your service.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we will move on, please, to the show is here on our agenda as public comment period, but as anybody knows, it's always open for public comment. We may not be able to answer the phone instantly, but I don't have a screen back up yet. But there we go. Anything at all, Keith?
We have no callers on the line at this time.
All right, thank you. That will bring us down to office business then. Pay the bills. I think I saw only one today.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, there are no payroll rosters today. There is one warrant register. It's fund expenditures. So move for approval of fund expenditures in the total amount of $307,868.92 as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Consent agenda. We have 3 items today on the consent agenda.
And Mr. Chairman, move for approval of the consent agenda, 3 items as presented. I do have a question on one of them.
I second with questions on item 2.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, my questions are on item 2 as well. I would defer to Commissioner Didier if you'd like to go first.
Okay.
My question, Keith, is why are we doing this, first off?
Okay, I'll be glad to respond to that. We have a contract with Tri-Cities Monitoring that is scheduled to expire December 31st of this year. And so this amendment will extend that into 2021. As you might remember, we discussed this a little bit in the budget proceedings last week. whether we would continue that contract or whether the sheriff's office would immediately take over that responsibility. This contract amendment just extends it into next year so that we have the opportunity to go through the right procedure with the bargaining unit. We are required under that contract to bargain the impacts of this change in direction with the corrections officers. And so this gives us time to do that. The extension also requires that we provide Tri-Cities Monitoring a 30-day notice if we intend to not continue the contract. That allows them an opportunity to redeploy their assets to other projects and not being done in a sudden way, but they've got 30 days to plan for that under this new amendment. So nothing particularly unusual or new about it. It just, as I said, extends this into 2021 to give us time to do a little more analysis of what the future holds for security at the county courthouse campus.
Let me rephrase that question. Why are we looking at the sheriff's office to take over security?
This was proposed by the sheriff's office. I believe Sheriff Raymond is on the line today, but the intent or the plan is for corrections officers to be available to take over security in the security shack, so that we have commissioned officers available to make arrests if necessary, or to stop and search anybody that needs to be, if there's reasonable suspicion that they need to do that. We've had a couple of instances where law enforcement was necessary right on the campus, situation where the sheriff personally was involved in a protester, and then we had one defendant in a courtroom that escaped the courtroom and had several county employees trying to apprehend that individual. So it's a matter of safety and security for the courthouse that the sheriff's office has proposed adding corrections officers to those locations to improve the security of the building.
Second question, how much more is this going to cost the taxpayers of Franklin County?
It will cost us more than what we're spending with Tri-Cities Monitoring. I don't have a specific amount. It will depend on how long we go with this extension. But the intent was to hire 2 additional corrections officers for the that would rotate in and out of the jail, as well as the security shack. The sheriff's office would be responsible for making those duty assignments for their personnel. But I could calculate that. I just don't have that in front of me at the moment of comparing the contract cost versus the in-house cost.
Yes, I'd like to see that analysis. And again, this is government versus private. I have a problem with expanding the size of government, and I think that the private sector has done a sufficient job with security.
So, is it okay if I chime in here?
Yes, sir. Let me turn your volume up. Please go ahead.
Okay, so the Franklin County Sheriff's Office covers all security, court security, campus security, monitoring by video, phone, radio, all of those issues. We also have responsibility of the security shack and take the responsibility of it, and have essentially private industry that's working that. In the long run, this provides better security for the courts, for the sheriff's office, for the employees of the county. I'm able to deputize, if you will, and empower the people at that front check-in to conduct law enforcement operations as needed. It's going to be a much safer approach, especially in the times that we're in. I'm not objectionable if you all want to keep it at a
private industry there. I'm just not going to accept the responsibility and the liabilities attached to that. So it would just have to be changed, I guess, on paper if some people want to keep it in private hands. So there was some forethought put towards this, thinking about this. In the long run, I believe it actually saves the county tax dollars and provides us the ability to provide more safety and training for the people that are actually doing that job there. And it's just supplement that we're already doing, which is an extension. It only exists because of our courts, and the sheriff's office, of course, is in charge of monitoring and executing the court orders and their safety and security when things are occurring. So it's just an extension of that.
So, Sheriff, I'd have to ask then, why did we set this up like this originally? Why didn't we just use the sheriff's office to begin with?
Well, I wasn't the elected sheriff then, Mr. Didier, Commissioner Didier. It was done long before I arrived. I don't know how to answer that to you. Maybe there's other commissioners sitting that know why they did that.
And I am with you, Sheriff. Going back, I was here when that went in, but I don't know the organizational, why we went to outside security. I just can't answer that.
Yeah, all I know is historically that this building was built for security for the courts, what we refer to as the security shack. How it was implemented to private business, I have no idea. I suspect it was over money, but at the end of the day, I'm just looking for alternatives that we can keep our employees and people visiting the courthouse a little more safer. And we have the ability to instantly respond because they'll have radio communications and equipment and training and all those issues to be more effective. And that's all I can offer as far as the question, Mr. Didier. I don't know how it occurred.
Okay, Commissioner Peck, you had a thought on number 2 also.
Thank you. My question was actually covered in the discussion, and it had to do with the analysis. And I'm sure when Keith is complete with that, he'll share it with the commissioners. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. So I think that was brought up at the last meeting that Keith was going to look into that. So, but according to our last meeting, we did need to extend out while that was being done. So that's what brought this forward today. So with that, we have consent agenda 1 through 3. Anything want to be pulled, or I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I believe we have a motion and a second, and then went to discussion.
Yes, I just caught myself with that also. So with that, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. That will bring us to your item, Keith, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have for your consideration this morning, it's essentially a budget item. It's the 2021 Veterans Assistance Fund Property Tax Levy. It is simply a letter approved by the board to the county assessor, Mr. McInderfer, and it asks the assessor to levy the minimum amount allowable by statute for the Veterans Assistance Fund. It's kind of commonly referred to as Soldiers and Sailors Fund for the 2021 budget year. This puts revenue into that fund to be used for veterans assistance in Franklin County.
And Mr. Chairman, as Commissioner Peck, I would think that consensus of the board is sufficient. I just want to point out that we are levying by this letter the minimum amount that we can under statute. We can't do less. And being a veteran myself, I certainly want to see veterans receive the support and services that they need. But as it turns out, the county fund for veterans is not suffering at this point in time, and we do have the option to increase it in the future if the need arises. So I can offer my support.
Well, Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Didier, and I too want to see our veterans taken care of. Keith, I ask you, have you checked into the, I guess, stipulations on the amount of money that's in the fund? How much is there currently? And what are the guidelines in our policy as far as using the funds, and how much is the limit that we can have in there without taxing anymore?
Well, I don't think you're required to assess the property tax levy. You could legally or within the statute not make this as levy, but then it would mean that there are no revenues coming into the Veterans Fund. As Commissioner Peck pointed out, it is stable right now. I would not characterize it as an excessive amount. I'd have to go to our system to look up the exact dollar amount that's in there. But the veterans programs that we manage for the county do depend upon a certain level of revenue to come in to keep that thing sustainable.
Okay, my question is, how many years of this is in that fund at this present time, and what are the guidelines in the policy as far as collecting more taxes when we haven't used the monies in the fund?
Well, as I said, the board could elect to not adopt this, but I'd have to go back to look to see what the current fund balance is.
I think in the past, it's just been pretty fluid. We've just, kept up with need. I don't think there's any excessive revenue put away.
Mr. Chairman, maybe we can ask the auditor's office of the status of this fund?
Sure.
I don't believe they're still on the call.
Matt, I'm here. I know the last time that we looked at this, I think there was, and this has been earlier this year, I think we had somewhere in the area of, 3 to 5 years worth of funds built up in the fund. So it was being underexpended for a number of years. And then, you guys put together a new Veterans Advisory Board, and then we were working with Kyle, I think. But I do believe at this time, and then given this the current situation, there's at least well over 3 years of tax revenue in that fund.
Hey, this is Tom Westerman. I'm still on the call. Right now, our Veterans Assistance Fund has a fund balance of $355,600.
Tom, what's the annual revenue that comes into that?
Annual revenue is, with the beginning fund balance of $196,000, it's $307,640. Year to date, we have spent, let me look. Year to date, we have spent $30,484 through the last payments.
So again, I want to correct you. I want to make sure I understand. $100,000 comes in per year to that fund?
We budget $111,640 as current revenue, and we carried over about $200,000 into the fund.
Okay.
This, Commissioner Peck, you're probably a little more up on this than by far I am. This new Veterans Coalition, is that going to generate more help for the veterans financially?
Well, let me come at it a little bit differently because I can't really speak for them. Certainly they exist to provide services for veterans, but how their funding is and what services they're going to provide, I just don't know, so I can't say. I will say that just like small businesses and families are hurting, suffering financially through COVID, so are veterans. And if there's a time to change or make a significant change in this taxing policy, I'd say it's probably not this particular year. Things are fairly unstable financially. Second thing I'd point out is that we changed our process and are handling it through human services, through Kyle Sullivan and his staff. And one of the issues that they're looking at is whether or not the amount of support that is currently provided to individual veterans is in fact the most that we're allowed to provide. It's been suggested that there are veterans that have much greater need and that we've got some locally derived caps on how much support we can provide to each veteran. And until I get a clear answer on that, I don't know that we have a good picture or good timing to change the policy. Clearly the expenditure of just over $30,000 a year with 111 coming in is more than sustainable. And so I'm sympathetic to those arguments, but the tax burden is frankly light on citizens for what I think is a high value and highly important mission. And I'd be certainly open in the next go around of the budget to pull it back in if we in fact don't see better, more extensive use of the funds that are in there. I just don't think the timing is right for that. The concept is fine.
Well, Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Didier, and I know that meeting with small businesses, and so many of them going out of business right now because they can't have their doors open. This is a significant time for everyone in this pandemic, and I think that when we've only spent $30,000 and we got 11 years built up in there, even if we doubled it, we would have 5.5 years. I think now is the time to lighten the load on the taxpayers and give these people an opportunity to come through this and still be in business to help pay the tax load of Franklin County.
Mr. Chairman, I would just add that I share Commissioner Didier's preference for smaller governance and smaller government and lighter taxes. But I'm also a pragmatist. My guess is that if I polled 100% of the people in Franklin County, a majority would say for veterans, I'm willing to support it because frankly, it's $1 a year. In principle, $1 is $1 and I get that. But $1 a year for veterans, I think the majority of our citizens would say, yes, we're on board and I'm on board.
Now, like I say too, I think this particular year maybe is not, because it's kind of a rebuilding year as far as what Kyle Sullivan's going through, trying to keep enough people on his board. And again, like I say, with this Veterans Coalition, there'll be maybe more information out for the veterans to receive more support. So I think hold off 1 year and look at it closer next year, and it's 0.25%. So it is not a resolution. It is just a advisory letter to the auditor and treasurer to, you've got the letter there in front of you. I don't have to read it. So
Mr. Chairman, at approximately $1 a year per citizen, I'm in favor of supporting our veterans, despite the fund balance. I think our focus needs to be on better using the funds we have and getting more funds out to veterans. And I agree with your analysis that if by next year we haven't seen a significant change, then it's the right time to look at it. Hopefully we'll be through this COVID challenge by then. Yeah. If you'd like a motion, I can certainly make one, but consensus by 2 commissioners is sufficient.
Yeah. I can support it.
So it sounds like we have at least a majority consensus at this point. So.
Affirmative.
All right. Thank you. The last item I have this morning, Mr. Chairman, is a recognition of yourself for your 16 years of faithful service and dedication to Franklin County as a county commissioner, most recently as the chairman of the Board of Commissioners. We have a certificate of appreciation that we would like to present to you in your office. We feel poorly that we're not able to meet in person and present this to you in person, but the restrictions have made public meetings not possible at the moment. But I would certainly welcome comments from the other commissioners, but on behalf of the county administrator and our staff in the county administration office, we extend our greatest appreciation to you for your dedication and leadership through these very challenging times of late, but also for the many years of service that you have rendered to the citizens of Franklin County. So thank you on behalf of the county employees.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm hearing phones ringing. Is that a public call coming in?
Well, I just put it on mute.
Okay, all right. That was in your office. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't jump in here and add to Keith's comments. On the one hand, I'm very happy for you to see you going on whatever the next chapter is. I know you're going to be spending a lot of time at the lake, and hopefully you're accepting visitors. You stuck it out through thick and thin, as they say, the last 16 years for people that haven't been in the county and watched county government over that time. It has changed a great deal. I came in a number of years after you, but when I came in, they were still using large 3-ring binders and killing trees weekly to print out documents for each commissioner to have a whole set of notes. And I believe that I was the first office that had a computer that got turned on in the commissioner's world. And I bring that up because you were serving at least 4 years prior to that. And you have seen the county change probably as much or more than anybody in the courthouse. And you've been a big part of the process improvements. And I think those years of service have certainly been good for the county. And then I also want to point out for people who don't know, and I suspect many don't, that your involvement at the state level with the County Road Administration Board and the Washington County's Insurance Fund and the Legislative Steering Committee of WASAC and on the board. And if I remember right, you might have even been president of WASAC at some point. Am I remembering that right?
No, I wasn't up that high.
Okay. Well, you ran most everything else that I saw you involved with. And I know that when I go to legislative steering committees with the State Association of Counties, people still reference Bob Cook's legacy and the wisdom that you brought to those processes. So good for you. Not many people really see the inner workings of what goes on with the county. And as they say, it's maybe a little bit like making sausage. There's parts of it aren't very pretty, but I can tell people without any hesitation that I've never seen Bob Cook in all the years that I've watched him as a commissioner do anything that he didn't think was 100% in the best interest of the citizens. And sometimes that involves taking some pretty tough votes. So good on you, and thanks for your service, and well done.
All right. Thank you, Brad. Appreciate the words.
Just want to say thanks, Bob, for the first 2 years of being a commissioner. You've been very instrumental in grooming up a farm boy to be in office. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Keith and Karen and all that's involved. I don't know who, there's a number of people on the phone, it looks like, and And I'd like to send my appreciation to everybody. And hopefully we rub shoulders again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are no callers on the line at this time, and I would offer as a suggestion that due to next week being between the Christmas and New Year's holiday, I don't think a meeting of the board is necessary, but certainly defer to the preference of the board on that matter.
Well, it's very seldom that we've ever had a meeting between Christmas and New Year's, but it all depends if everybody got all their contracts in that are due by December 31. I'll be in next week to sign my final vouchers, but other than that, I have to agree with you. Unless Karen's got something for us to do, we will not meet next Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm getting a negative from her that we don't have anything currently on the docket that has to be time sensitive.
If anything should show up, Keith, I'll make myself available, but I agree that likely we probably don't need a meeting.
Yeah, I hope to be able to take a little time off myself during that week, but I will be in town and be available if we need to meet.
All right. All right. Well, everybody, I don't know that I'll see very many of you in the near future, so have Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and carry on in 21. It's got to be a better year. This one's pretty testy.
Commissioner Cook, this is Sean Sam. I just wanted to thank you as well for all your service to the board and to Franklin County over the years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. If there's nothing else for the good of the board, better come down to the commissioner's office and get a cookie. It looks like there's plenty. So we will meet all again. Thank you, and we are adjourned.
All right. Thanks, Bob.